Yes, we are live, Sundaram. Over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to say a big thanks for joining this event. I hope you are all are enjoying your Saturday. So many of you may be new for this community. So let me give you a small introduction about this community. Our community name is Talklify. Talklify is mainly focused on Microsoft Technologies events. We 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 are planning to organize our events on every second Saturday from 10 a.m. IST onwards. And this is our second episode. And in this episode, we are going to explore mostly on Xamarin. So today we have two awesome Xamarin experts. Let me give you a very small introduction about them. Our first speaker is Logesh. He is a mobile app developer and .NET developer as well. He is a very good community contributor, speaker, blogger, and also Shishap Corner MEP. And our second speaker is Harikrishnan. He is also an author, speaker, blogger, and also a Xamarin developer, and and a certified Scrum Master as well. And he also organizes many events and also contributes to various communities. And without much delay, I would like to give the sessions to our speakers. Over to you, Lokesh.
Yeah, very good morning, guys. Yeah, today we're gonna to see what is Xamarin.Forms and the Xamarin.Forms Quickstart. Okay, without delay, we can go. Today we're gonna to learn what is Xamarin.Forms and the architecture of Xamarin.Forms and how Xamarin.Forms exactly works and why Xamarin.Forms we need to go. Okay, let's go. This is Xamarin.Forms. Xamarin.Forms is a library that enables you to build native apps for an iOS, Android, Windows using single code base. No need to worry about Android code or iOS platform specific or Windows platform specific. You can write a single code base and then you can run into iOS, Android, or Windows, any of the platforms. The most of the advantages, you can write a code reuse for an iOS, Android, and Windows, and dependency services. Sorry. Next one is a Xamarin.Forms structure. The XAML, extensible markup language. You can define your UI in XAML page. Like you are gonna to place any label or a text where you gonna place and when how you gonna the appearance of label and the visual appearance of your UI. And every XML page have code behind page. That exactly as a C# page. You're gonna to write the your business logic of that UI. Like you're gonna to place a button when the button is clicked and what gonna to do for the button clicked event. The exact behavior of your UI logic will be in the code behind. And the architecture, Xamarin.Forms built in the top of Xamarin Android, Xamarin iOS, and the UWP platforms. The native APIs you're going to use in Xamarin.Forms. The developers gives a unified, simplified API for to create native UI controls in Xamarin.Forms. The controls will be like a in native the performance, and native controls API. Your app gonna be a look like a native application, not a any other platform applications. Just like you're gonna to build a Xamarin.Forms application that looks very similar to the Android natively developed application. And you're gonna see you're gonna to build an active indicator in Xamarin.Forms. The in activity indicator, like you're gonna to run in iOS, the activity indicator looks will be different in, and gonna to run in Android, the progress bar will be different. And same like a UI slide bar. Slide bar. The slide bar will be different. In default in the iOS, the slide bar color will be blue in and Android the color will be in rose. And the architecture of this one total forms total Xamarin.Forms is directly inherit from the native controls of native APIs. Native platform API is not going to build any newly API. The developers gives a simplified API for you. And the most of developers asking, when I gonna to learn Xamarin.Forms, I need to know the Xamarin Android or Xamarin iOS. Absolutely no. If you gonna to work in Xamarin.Forms, the 95% of application gonna to complete in Xamarin.Forms, not in any platform specific applications like Xamarin Android, Xamarin. If you're gonna to work in more deep in platform specific code, that time you're gonna to hard to work for a platform specific code. Moreover, no problem for to use Xamarin application. Next one is tools. On Xamarin tools as a like a you're gonna prefer in Mac machine. You're gonna to build a Android and iOS application, not Windows application, not Windows app. If you're gonna to prefer Windows machine, you're gonna to build
Uh, Hi Lokesh, I think we lost your audio.
you can type Xamarin.Forms. Here you can see the template for a mobile app Xamarin.Forms, the multi-project template for an iOS and Android Xamarin.Forms. Here you can give your project name and location and solution name. Here you're going to place into existing solution or create new solution. I'm going to give name as app one. Create new. And it takes some time to create a project. It will give a different template like a blank application, blank, no need any of the UI controls in the bar. If you need a tabbed bar, it will give a tabbed bar layout like a master detail page in Android. In iOS in the slide bar. I'm plan to develop Android and iOS. Just click create and create new application. I have already created new application. Because of it takes some time to create a project solution. Just go to open test app. Yeah, your app looks like this. The solution you're going to create, you have created in last step like this. You're going to get a shared project. This is step one. This is a shared project. You're going to work in the here only. This is an Android native and this is an iOS native. You're going to work in any platform specific code, you're going to write it here only. Just to close, this is an app.xaml, app.cs. The app, when you start an application, the app will comes here. You're gonna to set the main page is the property. You can set the root page of your applications here. The main page. I have set now set the main page as the root page of our applications. Open main page. Here there is no controls to create. We're going to create some controls here. It takes some time. Before that, we can clarify the solutions. This is a dependency. You're going to install any of the NuGet packages or any of the third-party packages. You can install here from dependencies. And this is an Android native project. If you are not targeted in Android or iOS, you can simply right-click and delete the project, or you need to add any UWP or deleted iOS project. Just to go here and then add Xamarin iOS project. The iOS project you can add into the same solution. The Android application have multiple folders like assets and then resources. In the resources folder, you can add your images and then simplified renders and custom renders and dependency injection based on the controls. This is a main activity. If you started your application from this app method, it will call the main activity. It was rendered from Xamarin.Forms platform Android Forms compact activity. It will creates from this Xamarin Forms shared code based application. Once you have started your application comes here. This is an Xamarin Forms platform specific code. The load application loads from this app we have created in code base. Uh, Next one is an iOS. If you go to iOS, there is a resource folder. If you the large screen, like if you're gonna the splash screen or will be the like this. This is the first part. App delegates. This is not this one. You can set your application. Once you have started your Android application, the apps comes here, and then your application loads from the app page. You can place your images in assets folder. You can create multiple assets and add set the images 1x 2x all the compact in Xamarin iOS project. Just going to now we're going to create simple control in XAML. Just going to place a very simplified label. Just to create a label and then place horizontal option as a center and the vertical option as a center, and then give some text. Hello. Hello Xamarin. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Just to click here. Just to clean up the UI. Yeah, you can see we have created one label and we pasted in the center of the page, horizontal and vertical as the center. Just run the applications. If you run in Mac device from Windows to Mac device, you have to connect your Mac device. Like here, you can add Mac device by using the IP, or else if your Mac is not in the list, you can add it by using your IP address. You can add it. Once you have added the simulator and real device will be shown here. You can select any of your device like iPad Air, iPad Pro, or iPhone or iPhone 8, any of the devices. Just I have selected iPhone 8 and created hello world text. Next I'm going to run our application. We have run our application. It will take some time to run. Before that, we can discuss what is in this content page. This content page, the content page is a different pages will be available in Xamarin.Forms. We're going to look this about in forward. This is an Xamarin based XAML URI in 2014 released standard. This is a Microsoft XAML based URL. Yeah, our application is run. I think this X class namespace is derived from this XAML UI. Yeah, our application is going to run. Yeah, our application is running. Good. Hello world. Okay, just gonna to stop, and then we're gonna to create same UI in code base. We have deleted all the codes. Wait, before we can discuss about this code. This is an XML based name URI. We have standard Microsoft released in 2009. This was the X class is derived from the class. This is the main page that we have created here. The test app name and then main page, test app name and main page. we have created. Okay, next we go to our main page. Our main page.cs looks like this. Uh, Here you can get the content property. Content property equal to new label, and then we have set some. You have to place the UI in the center of the screen. Okay, just give horizontal option is equal to layout option dot center, and gives vertical option equal to layout option dot center, and then give some text. Hello world. Before that, we have given hello Xamarin, and we are going to set some text color dot red. Yeah, this is the color of our UI. There's a text we have given and text color. We have placed the layout option, the layout of the total UI layout. We have set in the center, and then horizontal option also center. It's like a more noisy compared to the designing in XML. If you're gonna to design any complex UI or else more defined UI, you have to prefer XAML, because if you're gonna to work in CS, it will be more complicated and then complex to understand the UI. Just we have set. Okay, next we have created the content property, and then we're gonna to run our application. And this main page is derived inherited from the content page. We're going to see in next slide how many pages will be, how many pages and layouts available to use, and then UI controls. Yeah, that's great. We have created hello world. Here is the hello world, and then we have set the color as red. The color will be red. Okay, that's great. Okay, how this content property will be available to you? Just to go to browser, just type Xamarin.Forms content page. Yeah, here you can see the content property of Xam content pages content. So we're gonna to set our layouts or any of the UI controls into the content property. It will assign into the content page. Okay, return back to uh, our code. This is looks like great. Okay, just we're gonna to add another page, like right click our shared project and go to add, and then new item, and then go to Xamarin.Forms. In the left plane you can select Xamarin.Forms. Here you can select content page, or else any of the pages will be available. Tabbed page, master detail page, list view, content page, and then view cell. This we are going to create another content page, like hello Xamarin. If you need, you can create a C# based only C# based application, C# based class, or else you can create a XAML class. If you created a XAML based page, it will automatically generate the C# class in the code behind it. Yeah, we have created. Yeah, we have created here. Yeah, default by default it will create one label and stack layout. We're going to do introduction for a stack layout and the label and other controls in the next slide. By default this creates expand XAML. Welcome to other Xamarin.Forms. We're going to change the app root page from app.cs. Just to change the name. Hello Xamarin. Sorry. Just to say hello Xamarin. Just go to the hello Xamarin page. Here you can see the, just again I'm going to run our application. Okay, in this demo, we have seen how to create a new Xamarin.Forms application, how to add a new page, how to set an root page of our application, and what is the use of the folders and the uh, native platform specific projects. Okay, let's stop the application and return back to slide. Next, we're going to see about the pages and layouts in available in Xamarin.Forms. By default, they gives content page, master table page, navigation page, tab page, and carousel page as the page views that we're going to use in Xamarin.Forms. It will be available by default. Next one is on layout. The layouts is stack layout, absolute layout, relative layout, grid layout, content view, and scroll view and frame. Based on your requirement, you can choose any of the layouts. More likely, most of them using stack layouts. And if you're going to work in complex UI, you're going to use. You should use absolute UI to achieve exact your needed a screen. Another one is a flex layout. I think is mixed measure in this presentation. Next, we're going to see about controls. The controls available in Xamarin.Forms is active indicator, box view, button, date picker, editor, entry, and Xamarin. And 40 plus controls are available in Xamarin.Forms. So just we have looked into one. Next, we are going to look at how to use layouts and place multiple controls in Xamarin.Forms. Okay, just go to use how to use the UI controls and layouts. Okay, we have created already created the buttons. Okay, done. We are going to now this time we are going to create a button. Just delete and then create button, and then as well as place this button as a center our page horizontal option center option text is equal to with me. And then for a button, if you have clicked event will be available by if you are familiar with C Sharp, you know the about events and event handlers. Like we are going to create an event for clicked. Just we have create one event method button on clicked. Yeah, it will be created in the code behind of that we have said in long in first slide how your business logic when your button is clicked what gonna to use. Just we are gonna to show display alert. The title is title. Xamarin. Hello Xamarin Forms and You okay. Okay, done. We have created one alert for and shows. This is a simple display alert. We have like a in Xamarin.Forms control that I have inherited from the native. It will create the native UI of Android and iOS. Just we're gonna to return back to the XAML. Here you can see we're going to use stack layout. Inside we have placed the vertical option center and then horizontal option center. So the button will be comes in the center of the page. Just rerun our application. Wait few more seconds. Yeah, I think some problem. What is the problem? Just to return back to. I don't know what is the exact problem. Just enter. Yeah, here you can see our stack load buttons is created in the top of the our simulator, but have some issues in this. Just to click the button. Yeah, it will create the alert. Like title is we have given in the title, in the code behind what we're gonna title is title. Yeah, title and given hello world and okay and okay. Yeah, you created okay. This should be in cancel. Sorry. Okay, done. You have created. You can click multiple times and there is no issues for this. Okay, done. Cancel. Just rerun our application. Okay, done. Okay, return back to the slide. We have used our stack layouts. Just to go to the stack layout, how to you can place the stack layout. The vertical option should be fill and expand, and then horizontal option should be fill and expand. Okay, we have set. Yeah, the looks may be good. Okay, done. So okay, we have button is placed in wrong place. Just we have rerun our application. It takes few minutes. Our application is installing and restarted. Done. It was placed in wrong place again. I don't know exactly what happens. Okay, we can see. Okay, if you guys running our application, we have to set our starter project as Android or iOS. Just right click the project and set as the starter projects options. Here you can select your starter project. If you wanted to select multiple starter projects, you can go here. Just go to select starter projects. Yeah, you can see set multiple startup projects in Android and iOS. Now, currently, I have selected as a Xamarin iOS only project that I have run in the simulator. My Mac device was connected with the Mac, so it was easy. If you don't have Mac, you can't run your iOS application with a simulator. Okay, return back to the slide. Now we're gonna to see the architecture, the exact architecture of Xamarin Android and iOS and Xamarin.Forms. The exact architecture is these three platforms run the top of Mono platform. Mono Mono version. The Mono is the open source .NET version for non-Windows platforms. Non-Windows platforms for an iOS or Android. Okay, let's start how this Mono was works. The Mono for Android and Mono for iOS. The Mono for Android is works. It will wrapper the native API of Android into directly into the Shisha class. This was a more complex. We don't want to go into deep. We don't have time. First of all, and the another thing that the native Xamarin, sorry, native iOS controls and the APIs will be wrapped in the over of Mono for iOS. Okay, next to go to deep of Mono for Android. How Xamarin Android exactly works? If you return the code in C Sharp, the compiler will create the intermediate language code under the mono runtime. With the mono runtime, it will generate the native API code with the use of JIT, just in time compilation. This is the flow of your C sharp code to the native Android code. Next one is Xamarin iOS. This is looks different because of the iOS Apple restricted the Mono to run in iOS applications. Okay, first of all, the C# code is compiled into the intermediate language. In the head of time compilation, it will directly running the your native iOS applications. There is no mono for in the middle of intermediate language between native and intermediate language. Next, the architecture. How Xamarin.Forms was exactly built. In the top of Xamarin and Xamarin.Forms is UWP. The single DLL named as Xamarin.Forms.core. This is a unified API that will available the render all the controls of Xamarin iOS, Android, and UWP controls will be referred over the Xamarin.Forms.iOS. Sorry, Xamarin.Forms.core. Okay, next is we can see how the Xamarin.Forms was exactly works. Okay, okay, we're gonna just see here. We have run this class already, right? Okay, done. Just to open this project and all the projects and open bin over debug and .NET. Here you can see Xamarin hello Xamarin class here. It will automatically generate the hello Xamarin.xaml.gi.cs. You can open this class. This is an automatic generate class. You don't want to any changes here. It will generate the UI controls that you have created in XAML page. It will called initialize components that we have here. You can open Xamarin. This is not a base class of the content page. It was called it the initialize components called to this auto generated xamarin.xaml.g.class file. The global Xamarin.Forms.xaml extension load from the XAML. The XAML parser load all the controls into the C sharp. If you create a label or button, it will be automatically wrapper or this XAML parser class automatically converts into our C sharp code. This is exactly how inside it works. Okay, this is the code parser of XAML to Xamarin.Forms. Okay, we're gonna see how Xamarin.Forms works exactly. Okay, here you can see the dependencies, packages inside Xamarin.Forms. Inside you can see that I have mentioned in slide Xamarin.Forms.core.dll. You can open, you can't, I think you can go to Object Explorer. You can see Xamarin. Forms code. It will take some time because of the lot of DLLs will be available if you search and then gives you the exact result. Wait few minutes. Yeah, here you can get Xamarin.Forms.core. Just expand the controls. What happens? Wait a second, I have opened from here. Xamarin for Android. Yeah, done. Here you can see Xamarin.Forms.core. Yeah, that's great. Here you can see that we have shown the controls in the slide. All the controls and wrappers will be available here. Xamarin Forms, Reflex, Xamarin Forms, Xamarin Forms. That the animation API. Then this all the APIs are native APIs directly rendered with the native iOS or Android APIs. The behaviors and then all the controls that we have created like a entry, label, buttons, everything will be rendered over the native controls. Here you can see like if you're not visible, yeah, here you can see all the controls of Xamarin.Forms. Here you can see Xamarin.Forms.4. There is no, I think, tutorial will be available. You can see the stack layout, stack layouts with property, different properties, orientation, spacing, and all other properties. Properties. Okay, this controls how rendered with Xamarin Android or Xamarin iOS. This is the next question, right? Next, we're gonna to open our Xamarin Forms. This is the Xamarin. Here you can see Xamarin Forms platform.android. Here you can see all the controls of rendered renders. Here you can see all the controls, cell adapters, entry cells. Sorry, yeah, export visibilities and activity flags and color controls, Xamarin Forms, pop-ups, key extension labels, page renderer, platforms, resources. All the native APIs will be rendered into Xamarin Forms.platform.android. Same as well as the iOS, sorry, Xamarin.platform.iOS. You can see all the box review renderer, cell renderer, and then color extensions and the default cell, and then entry cell, and then event tracker, and then forms checkbox and a grid layout, and all other APIs will be available here. This API will be rendered over the over into the Xamarin form. So that's called that is how they build our application. Just to open our application Xamarin.Android. Here you can see all the controls. Not here. Just to open here you can see the mono.android and then Xamarin forms. You get packages same as well as expand our iOS project and go to references. Here you can see Xamarin.essential and Xamarin.Forms and Xamarin.iOS. This all Xamarin.iOS. Here you can see all the accelerate accounts and then yeah, add support and IR kit and then contacts API and contact UI and then images, intents and then PDF kit and then my favorite UI kits. Here you can see all the APIs of native controls. See IUI text triads that we have created buttons, the UI buttons. That is exactly UI button, but we have created as a button. It will render to over top of Xamarin Forms. Okay, okay. Let's stop this one and then this was how Xamarin Forms exactly works. Okay, then back to Next one is on why we're going to go to Xamarin.Forms. Xamarin.Forms or Xamarin gives a same day support. Like from iOS 5 to iOS 13, all the versions will be supported, and Android 10 and Android 11 was released. Android 11 SD also supported. And then go to the libraries and tools. The different libraries and tools will be available to use, ready to use, free and open source to use, like County services and Active Directory, SQLite, SCIA, and then Lottie and Syncfusion, Telerik, and a lot of open source tools and the controls will be available to use. And then next one is on frameworks. To create your application with a structure or framework, MVM cross, React UI, Prism or reactive extensions. More likely, more frameworks also available to use. And then next one is on continuous integration and delivery. You can We have developed our application in Visual Studio, so you're going to use Azure DevOps, TeamCity, or Bitrise. Then go to Xamarin Forms. Then
Hi, Lokesh. I think we lost you.
this is a quick start.
Hi, Lokesh. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, bro.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, thanks for the session, Lokesh. I think it was a good start for the beginners. I think it would be a good session for the beginners. So, thanks much for the session. So, let us wait for a couple of minutes if there are any questions.
Yeah, okay, bro.
Yeah. Okay. So, there is. Okay, so there's a question from Sundaram. So he says, "Good start for beginner." And the question is, can anyone start Xamarin without having knowledge in C sharp?
No, bro. You need any basic knowledge to develop.
Okay, okay. So we need knowledge in C sharp to start with Xamarin.
Yeah.
Okay, 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 fine. Okay, hope that answers your question, Sundaram. Okay, I think those were the questions. So, guys, so if you have any questions regarding getting started with Xamarin Forms, like you can reach out to him in Twitter. So this is his Twitter handle, Logesh Palani 98. Like you can just join, follow him in Twitter, and if you have any doubts, you can just ping him. He will able to reply to you. Yeah. So thanks, Lokesh. Thanks for this session. Thank you.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah. And next up, we have Hari Krishnan. He's going to share us in detail about Xamarin.Forms here with XAML. So over to you, Hari.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Logesh. That was an amazing session. So, thanks for putting things together. So, just to confirm my audio, am I audible? Can anyone please confirm so that I can proceed further? Can you just ping in the chat window that my audio is okay? I'll wait for some time. Yeah, fine. Oh, it has confirmed. Right, that's great. So then we can keep going. So welcome everyone. First of all, thank you so much for putting your time in here in this wonderful Saturday. Rather than spending your time for yourself, thanks for watching it. And this session is all about Xamarin.Forms UI with Xamarin. So Lokesh has explained about how things are done in Xamarin.Forms, how it is architectured, how the project structures are, how UIs can be crafted, what are the things that are available in Xamarin. So what we are going to see here in this session is we're going to extend that and look in detail how we can craft beautiful UIs in Xamarin just with Xamarin. So without delaying too much, talking about myself, I'm Harikrishnan. So I'm basically someone who's working in Xamarin for over 5 years, and I have an overall industry experience of 6.5 years. And you can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and you can see my works on my GitHub repositories as well. So I have given all the details here in the slides. Fine. So coming to today's agenda, so we're just going to recap what Lokesh has touched it, what is Xamarin and why Xamarin is so very important, and what are the things that really matters why to pick up Xamarin. That's pretty much predominantly what we are going to see today, and then the XAML part. So what is XAML? So what exactly is XAML and how it contributes to the development of Xamarin, and then the XAML features, what all the features that it holds and what are the advantages that brings in, and the MVVM, so which obviously is highly rated nowadays, as it is very much useful to develop applications across, develop enterprise applications, so that you could you could do your works split it across various regions, and apart from that, the data binding. So we'll see how data binding is used. What is data binding? How it is used. Xamarin to craft beautiful UIs to bind your data with your UI, and we're going to touch about styling. So styling is something an awesome feature in Xamarin.Forms, I would say, that gives you a lot of flexibility to design and customize your UI. So fine. So what is Xamarin? As Lokesh rightly said, it is nothing but it's a cross-platform technology that allows you to write code just once in a single shared C sharp and also a single UI that will render your UIs across multiple platforms, be it Android, iOS, or Windows platforms. That's all about Xamarin. How it renders, as he explained. So I'm just going to touch about that a little bit here. So typically any Xamarin.Forms control, you can see it as a wrapper control of native control. So any control that you see in Xamarin.Forms in an ideal scenario, when you wanted to target multiple platforms as a business user, so you would be ending up with going and developing native applications, which would require different environments, different IDEs, different languages. The cost is high, the budget is high, the time spent is high, resources consumed is very high. So, what if there is a technology that would do the works for you to minimize your efforts and let develop controls across various platforms? And that's typically what Xamarin does. It's a framework which almost does a lot of works for you. So let's for example take this image control. An image in Xamarin.Forms, what it typically does is it has a built-in renderers for every platform. So any control that you use in Xamarin.Forms, or even that you develop in Xamarin.Forms, is nothing but a native control rendered internally by Xamarin. So let's take example the image control. So it will have an image rendered across each platforms. So what this image renderer does is this will load whenever you create an Xamarin.Forms image control. This in turn will load the native image, which is the image view, which is the UI image view in terms of iOS, image view in terms of Android, and image in Windows, and that will be shown in the UI. So that's as rightly said by Lokesh. What you will see in the outcome of the screen or in your apps or in your mobile is just the native UIs. So Xamarin does the middle work for you. It renders the native element, and this is how it also works for the custom controls and custom views. Any custom control that you develop in Xamarin does the rendering part. It will render an equivalent native control, and then that shows in the output. You're also allowed to customize this rendering part, so that's something which comes in very handy. You can go write a custom renderer for any existing control or any custom view that you're creating in Xamarin, and you can customize whatever you want. Let's say, for an example, I have a label control which is rendering in Xamarin.Forms. I want to customize it. In Android, you can load it as label. In iOS, you can load it as button if you would require it to do. So that to that level, you can customize rendering another element itself when you're using when you're customizing the renders in Xamarin.Forms. All right. So by now that little bit answers why Xamarin, but still, what are the other advantages? What would you typically expect when you come for a hybrid application or a cross-platform application? So you are essentially or ideally going to develop applications, so you would be requiring a complete framework that supports everything that you require for developing applications, short span of time, reducing your efforts, and to get it done with only what you know. So Xamarin is typically for those, if you are a C Sharp guy, all you know is C Sharp, and you just wanted to get your applications done and developed across multiple platforms. The right pick is Xamarin.Forms. Why? Because you are going to do your logics just in C Sharp, and your UI either in C Sharp or in XAML, which is going to be a common shared one, which can support multiple platforms: Android, iOS, UWP, and also a few other platforms like Windows WPF, Windows Forms recently, and it also supports Tizen OS and all. Fine. So to precisely summarize, Xamarin provides a complete set of packages that is required to do an application development. So it's just not about that. It provides you various support. It's an open source basically. So you get in contributions, you get in whatever resources, starting from the documentation to delivery. You get everything that is required for an application development. There are options to distribute your builds. There are options where you can get it tested. You can get the crash analytics and reports. So using the app centers, you can have an internal build delivered. So end-to-end process can be controlled when you are developing in Xamarin.Forms, and that is why typically Xamarin is a complete mobile solution. So it gives you a complete set of framework with all features, everything ready in a properly structured and architectured way, so that you can just put things in the right places. It's like having done an enterprise level applications in a proper manner. So one other advantage of Xamarin.Forms is, what it does. I've explained it. It does a rendering mechanisms, and how what other benefits it gives is native performances. How this is done is, it rather not cross compile. So when talking about any hybrid platforms or any cross platforms, we tend to think about cross compilations. But what Xamarin does instead is, it has its own compiler and optimizer. So the Android takes the advantage of just-in-time compilations on Android devices, so it just gives the exact native performance on par the what it looks like when you are developing in Android technology. When it comes to iOS, it does an ahead of time compilations to produce an ARM binary for the app stores, for the Apple's App Store. So that's one another advantage of Xamarin. So that pretty much summarizes, why Xamarin is very much important. So starting from a simple applications to an enterprise applications, starting from scratch to deliver an applications, everything that you need to build, deploy, distribute, test, and even get crash reports and distribute is possible in Xamarin.Forms, and that is why Xamarin is a complete mobile solution. Fine. So with that case, let's jump into the actual topic of us. So what is XAML? So the topic for the day is XAML stands for Extensible Application Markup Language. So what it helps is, it helps you develop your user interfaces, craft your UIs very declaratively. And the best part is, it is something very similar to XML, but it's not just limited to that. It is very much more than that. You can see the UIs, representations, and a lot more stuff you can do with XAML, which we are going to see for the entire rest of the session. And what are its features? It's great for MVVM. So MVVM is basically model view model. So we'll just touch about that as well. And the visual representation of UI, as I said, you can see how it actually renders. You can see the layouts, how it looks like, and it is toolable. Toolable, when I say that, it has certain tools like hot reload. You don't have to recompile your app. Actually, you can just launch your applications one time. You can do whatever changes in your XAML, save it. The UI will be re-rendered, which is awesome. You don't have to recompile your code every time. And there is another feature called XAML Previewer. So you actually don't have to, run your applications to see how the UI looks like. Just design it in the XAML, see it how it looks like. You can exactly see how it will be rendered in the runtime. So I'll show a demo of that, and that's very awesome about this XAML feature. And MVVM, as I said, it stands for Model View Model. And what typically it does is, it segregates your data, your user interfaces, and your business logic, so that, ideally for an enterprise level applications development, various teams will be working on together. The data part will be worked in somewhere else place. The UI team will be residing in some locations, and the business logics might be done in some other places, and you have to get it collaborated. So getting this done in a very normal approach is not possible. So that flexibility is what MVVM success is. It gives you options to segregate or loosely couple your application, so that you can take whatever advantage you can take. So the view part is the user interface. As I said, the view model is where you're going to write your C# business logic. And the data binding. So data binding is a very important feature in Xamarin.Forms or any XAML control, any XAML supporting platform. So what data binding does is, it links the properties of two objects in a very layman terms. To be uh, telling it in a technical way, it transfers the data between source to target and target to source. So that is, your business logics or your data from one end is going to be rendered or communicated to your UI. And that's what data binding is all about. So as I said, it's an integral part. The way I tell it is easily understood that it's an integral part of MVVM. And how it typically works is, how this data binding actually works is, uh, it's like having every UI associated to an object. So that will be the context for the object, and any data in that particular object can be shown or can be rendered with that particular UI. So that context is known as binding context. So you can mention an object to be a binding context for a view. So any property values of that particular object can be displayed in the UI through the binder. So that's how it typically works. And there are various binding modes in getting this done. So in getting this data communication to happen actually. So the default one depends on what type of view we are using. And the other binding modes are one way, which will transfer the data from your source to the target, which typically means will send the data from your view model or model to your UI. So any changes in the UI doesn't go back to your view model. You can just only render the data if you're using the one-way binding mode. And one-way to source is just opposite to that. The data from your UI will just go back to your view model or model objects, rather than data from your model will never come back. So it is one-way to source. Anything that you entered on UI, you can store it up. Maybe something like a feedback form. Whenever you type a feedback, it will be stored there, and you don't render it back. You don't have to render it back. And two-way is a binding mode, which transfers the data back and forth. So typically, like any form data, so the data which are previously loaded will also be rendered, or if you wanted to make any additions, that will also be updated in the database. It's simple, like updating your profile information in any social media networks you do. So that's how it typically does. It renders your old data. Whatever you do is also getting updated there. And this is one other feature in Xamarin. So one time, this is something very similar to one way. The only difference is, the data goes from source to target and everything similar to one way. The only difference is that this gets the data loaded in the initial time and only when the binding context changes. That's it. All right. So how typically Xamarin.Forms UI works? So all you see here is, uh, this is just a simple tabbed page with a login informations design. So all you see here is, the native UIs. The iOS, the tabs are at the bottom. You can see that. For the Android, you can see the tabs are at the top. And UWP typically in its own fashion, that tabs are at the left top corner. So all this have the native UIs. However, what you will be actually doing is just write one code. So this particular one code is what actually going to render you the native code. We are not going to write in three codes. That typically saves a lot of time and energy for any developer or any business enterprise. Fine. So an extension to that, fine. We've seen about binding. We've seen the data flows from view model to model, or view model to view, or model to view, from the front end to back end. That's all fine. So what if I need a data from another view? What if my view, is has to be loaded or decided based on another view? That's also possible. Then that is called view to view bindings. You can load the values of properties of one UI to another UI using this binding concept. We are typically going to see this in examples as well. So in this example, you could see that. So this is exactly the code which I'm going to show in my demo as well. I've done a little bit modifications on top of this as well to even to make it even more easier to understand. What I've done is I've added an extra um, switch on top of this slider, so that we could enable this UI based on the property change of that particular switch. I'll explain things in detail when we see the demo. All you can see this X reference part here, which actually informs the label with the text rotation that slider is your context. So this slider object, which is obviously any UI element is an object, will be the reference for this label. So how it typically works is, assume that label has to render some things and the address to look at it is the slider. So what label does is, after giving this binding context as slider to the reference, this label typically goes and look at what is there on the slider. So in the next line, you can see that the rotation is mapped to path value. So what it typically means is, this path of value, property value. So the label when rendering in runtime will look out for the property value in the slider. So if it is available, it will just render the value of that slide value property to the rotation, and it will render in runtime. That's how it typically works. So similar way to the label here, the slider's angle, current angle, or the current range of the slider is shown as a text here. So we will see the demo of this in live in real time. Fine. The next part which we are going to see in this demo is about styling. So there are lots of styles. What style gives you is, it lets you customize your UI. You can design your UI, and typically what you expect next is to customize it based on your requirements. You might need some other, requirements. There might be some requirements to edit it based on platforms, or based on phones, or based on uh, any other factors of business needs, based on the options or any conditions as well. So this styling lets you, do that customizations in the UI level. So there are various styles explicit style is something which you define explicitly for a view, and you can access it using a key. You can write a style, configure it with a key, and whenever you use that key to any UI elements or visual elements in your UI, that typically gets rendered. And the implicit styles are something which is a template or which is a default style that has to be applied for any target type. Let's say, for an example, if you are writing a style for a label as an implicit style, it typically applies for entire labels or all the labels that are available within the resources where you're writing that style. For example, if you're writing it inside a layout, all the writing a style for label inside a layout, all the labels inside that layout will be applied with that style implicit style. The same applies for the page as well. If you're writing it in the page resources, any labels in that page will be applied with that implicit style. And global style is something, there are cases, where you have to maintain consistencies and you cannot go in and write styles on every pages. So typically an enterprise level applications will have standards and you'll be defining it. So in my application, the label is going to look like this. In my application, the button is going to look like this. So what you can do is, you can define them in your app resources and keep it there so that it applies across your entire applications. Anywhere, if you wanted to customize something peculiarly for one side, there you can still customize it. That particular UI alone will reflect, whereas the all other labels used across the applications will still just be rendered only using this set of configurations or set of properties what we have configured. And there is one other um, feature called style inheritance. This is very exciting. You can actually reduce the number of lines that you are writing in terms of styles. Let's say you are writing a style, or you do have requirements to have style your UI based on multiple conditions. It's, certain values of your UI elements are just the same. You can write a base style, and you can just write another style based on your base style and get it done. So you can actually reduce. You don't have to repeat your code then and there. You can just like using methods and C sharp, you can define or you can plan your UIs accordingly or your styles accordingly to use it. And the dynamic styles. It's not just about only specifying everything at the compile time. You can actually do things dynamically. You can let your labels, or you can let any of your UI elements render different styles in the runtime based on your conditions. So all you have to do is just configure the dynamic resource for that. And device styles, there are certain set of device styles built in available, and you can take the advantage of that as well. And this device styles can be applied dynamically as well. And style classes, so one other killer feature in Xamarin.Forms is the style classes. So the style class, what it lets you, it lets you configure a style, um, something very similar to explicit styles. The only advantage here is, you can apply multiple styles to an visual element using the style classes. You can define a style class, and you can define one or more style classes and call them, you know, apply them all together for a new element wherever you require. So as I said, the device styles, the list of device styles, so there is something called body style, caption style, title style, subtitle style, and list item detail text style, and list item text style. So these are the built-in styles that are available for uh, of, available in Xamarin.Forms. You can readily use it. So it's very simple. If you are styling a label, all you need to do is just set the style, dynamic resource, title, style. That's it. You're done. So it will typically render how a title will look like for a label in your UI. And there are some other features in Xamarin.Forms as well that we have to look at it. So one is styling using your CSS, and uh, yes, Xamarin also allows this. All you have to do is just load your CSS file, mark the build action of that CSS style as an embedded resource, configure it as a source to your application resource or your page resource wherever you want, and the style is rendered. That's something as simple as it is. And you can theme your Xamarin.Forms applications. You can do any number of themes, and based on your uh, uh, requirements, you can switch them in runtimes. And all you need to do is define resources As I said before, using the static and dynamic resources, you can switch your theme, respond to theme changes in runtime as well, and that's all possible in Xamarin.Forms. And one another feature in Xamarin.Forms is the material visual. So there are cases where you would expect your Xamarin.Forms applications or your applications to look similar in all the platforms. You don't want it to appear just like native. You want your application to be same everywhere, irrespective of whatever platforms. And that is also possible by using the Xamarin.Forms material visual. So if let's take the bank apps for example. The bank apps almost look similar, and almost it looks similar on all platforms that you use in. So that's one typical example for Xamarin Forms Material Visual, where it lets you see the same UI across multiple platforms. There's another feature called Visual State Manager. What it does is, the Visual State Manager helps you define styles or define how your visual element should behave for various states. There are built-in common states like focused state, normal state, disabled state, where you can go and configure how your UI element should look like on every state. There is also option to customize or create your own groups as well. You can create your own visual state groups, name it, and you can apply that state on your code wherever you want and style your UI accordingly. That's as simple as it is. Very cool features that are available in Xamarin.Forms. So we're not going to actually code all these features in this demo, as it's going to take some more time. So we already have a lot of things to see. But how I've given all the references of this in my references slide, and you can go and look back up to this section. So fine, let's code. Let's start the code. All right. So let's start with the XAML page here. So as I said, Xamarin.Forms allows you to see um, the provides you with two killer features, which is XAML Previewer and Hot Reload. One such feature is this. You could see that the UI is rendered here already readily. All I have done is some code part here, and it is just, I've not done any running any code changes anywhere here. Typically it renders how it looks, how the actual UI application looks in the runtime in Android. So you can even change it for devices as well, across various devices, and you can see it in landscape mode as well. So that is possible with this features. So let's go back here. Let's go back to the code. So fine. So we're going to see a lot of coding here in this session. So what I've typically done here is have a stack layer which has two labels and a switch and a slider and a label. So what typically I'm going to do is I'm going to just only use the XAML without any code behind, without any other phases, just the XAML. I'm going to run and I'm going to design applications and get it run to make the UI very responsible in the runtime. That's what this does. It. First, let's see the output of how this behaves in all the platforms, and then we'll see what is there in this code. So first, let me run this in Android. So as Lokesh has said, by default, any application that is developed in Xamarin.Forms, you will have these three platforms supported, and you can also see that you can create a new project here, file new project, and I hope he has explained everything on that, and he touched upon it as well. Fine. So the UI part is ready here. So one feature which I showed you is the XAML previewer. Without running my code, without doing anything, just after saving the XAML, I could able to see how my XAML looks like in the XAML previewer in the design mode itself. So this is one another feature which is called XAML hot reload. So you could see that maybe I would change the background color here to yellow. and you can see that it is just, I've not stopped my applications, I've not done anything extra. I've just changed my color and saved it here, and you can see that the changes are getting affected in the runtime without any, without having to recompile the applications. That saves in a lot of time, isn't it? So fine. What I have done is I've just rendered a label with XAML demo as a like title. I have a label here, a switch here, slider here, and another label here. That's it. A very simple view. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use the value from this property to enable this view. The values of this slider to control the values of the text, the rotation part here, and that's what we are going to see here. This is awesome, right? This is highly responsive, just as easy as it does. And all we have done is just 10 lines of code hardly. So let me just explain you the code here. What it typically does is this label here, this stands for this. This is actually the XAML demo here. What I have done here is I've set the horizontal options to fill and expand, which means the label will take whatever space that its parent gives. I've given the vertical options as start, which means the label has to be at the top of my view. The background color, obviously, the text color I've given is black. The font size to be 40. I want the font to be very big, so I've given it as 40. There are some predefined font sizes as well. You can set it to title, subtitle, small, micro, medium, large, header, caption, body. There are so many things available. You can see that here, render. So header is too much, very big, so I'm not using that. So you could set that to large, medium, subtitle, title. It will be rendered as simple as it is. All right. So whenever you save it, it just reloads. Fine. So I have given the font attribute as bold. I want my title to be shown as bold color. And the text alignment, I want it to be center. There are various options where you could just, set it to your center or your right end or at the start. So here in this case, I've mentioned the center, and I've given the height as hard-codedly as 100. I just want the label to be rendered only for the 100 height. Fine. Similar to that, I have a label text here, which is a rotation displayed. What I have done differently is now I have informed the label to take the context of slider. So all we have to define is the name for the slider. I have mentioned that slider as a reference here. And this slider has a property called value. This slider will have a property called value, which I can show here. So what this label does on runtime is it goes, check these references, checks for this property called value, and if there is one, that will be rendered as a text here. I mean that will be rendered to the rotation property here. Fine. So what else I have done here is I've just mentioned is I've just created a switch and mentioned it to render it in the center, and I wanted this slider to be enabled only when this switch is toggled. Switch has a property called toggle, which has the values of on and off, like on and off, yes or no. So this toggled property here is used by this particular sliders enabled. So as you see here, sorry, if I enable this, I can use this slider. If I disable this, I cannot interact anywhere with this slider. It's as simple as it is. So I have mentioned the references. So these are the two different features that I wanted to explain. As I said, when we are doing view-to-view binding, you could see that here I have given the entire labels context to be the slider. Whereas here, I have not given this entire sliders context as something else. What I have done here instead is, I've just only referred this property is toggle. This is toggled has to be taken from the switch. So these are the two types of, binding that you could do within the view. So one is either to a peculiar or a particular property of a view, or to the entire view you can set the context of. All right. So here again, I have just set the context for the entire control, and I've instead set it to the text value, uh, whereas here it is set to the rotation value, and this responds to the runtime. This text changes by default has property changes, which is a bindable property, and hence it responds in the runtime. Fine. So this is as simple as it is. So let me run the same code here for the iOS as well. So as Lokesh said, whenever you are running your applications in iOS, you need a Mac setup readily done. So I have my Mac configured readily, and I have connected it. As he said, no, you can get that paired here using these options here. I've already paired my Mac, and I will be shown the list of devices here. So I have this emulator already configured ready. So let me just run this. So it typically just renders a native view of how this looks like in iOS. So as simple as it is, we'll notice the same behaviors, whereas we will see a different UI. How a switch looks like in iOS will be different when compared to Android. So typically it is like a UI toggle button in iOS, whereas in Android it's very different. Fine. So you could see here, the toggle button here is different and the slider's appearance is different, and whereas the behaviors will be, the functionality will be just the same, as simple as it is. One thing you could see that this is one other support which is given by Xamarin. You could see that this part in the top is also taking the safe area. We can actually configure that in just one line of code. You could see here I have another thing commented. So all I wanted to do was just paste it here. So what is this is now iOS has some, the Xamarin has some specifics which can be taken advantage of. I have already defined this iOS specific, which is available, and you can enable the safe area. And there are of course various other options that can be done as well. You can set the last title display. You can use the safe area insets. You can set it up. In this case, I'm just showing this safe area pieces, and you could see that just instantly the demos is reloaded and this part is not used. So if you are setting this property, you can even customize the uh, you know Android iPhone X, which is the safe areas in the iPhone X at the top and bottom. So that level, it gives detailing when you are doing your code in Xamarin.Forms. You actually have to do very less code, what you can render everything across various platforms. And let's see the exact demo of this in the UWP as well. Set that as start a project. I'm running my local machines. So it's very rare nowadays UWP is used, but still we can see that how it renders. And the further part of the demo, whatever we see, whatever code we do, and we will see it only on Android, just for the time saving purpose. All right, so you could see that the UI is rendered here. Awesome. The same functionality, how like slider looks in here. Awesome. Fine. Let me just come back to Android. There are various other things that you can do in Android. So one other thing which I had shown here is styling this UI. So we can typically design this UI. What it does is very simple. It has a stack layout and two entries and a button and a label. That's it. So we're just going to create the exact UI and explain how it works typically. For which we have to add another page all the tablet page. So let me name it as tablet page. So I'm not gonna waste my time writing the code here. I'm just having everything already pre-done. Let me just copy paste it and explain it so that we could save time. Fine. So this brings in then the reason why I choose this is, this explains the view model piece. We've talked about MVVM. So however we have not still have seen it, right? So let's take a chance to get that seen. All right, fine. So all I have done here is, let's first talk about the UI, then we'll come to the binding and the view model part and the MVVM, how it works all together. So fine, I have a tabbed page, so which will give you an appearance of tabs. Simple. So this tabbed page children will have two pages. So one is a profile page and another one is a settings page. Settings page is very simple. Welcome to settings page with the text in the center, everything aligned to the center. Fine. This is as simple as it is. All right. So here I have a stack layout inside the tabbed page. There are various layouts as Lokesh has explained. You can use grid. You can use a simple content view to render only one element. You can have your own custom layouts as well. There are various other layouts like flex layouts. You can use a list view. You can use a collection view. Anything you can do it. For this simple thing, since we are starting with XAML, I don't want to complicate too much and using a simple stack layout so that I can arrange my items one below the other. Fine. All I have is an entry with a placeholder username, which will be there placed by default. This username, I have used it for binding. So this I'll explain later. And then next is the entry part. This is one other feature, is password. You just have to mention your entry, that whether it is used for a password. That's it. And I have a button below that, and just a label to validate. This is typically a login form. Just whenever I enter some text, if that text is not empty, I'm just going to show that this login is success. I've not done anything too much. If the label is not empty, I've just mentioned it as login success. However, in real time scenario, anything can be configured, any conditions or any API calls can be made there using asynchronous calls, and all things are supported. So then followed by that, to make the UI look better, I've just added a configuration of activity indicator here. That's it. So all I have to do is go to this page, you know, change my main page to be demo tab page. Fine. I've configured. I've informed my application's main page to be the demo tab page. Now I have the demo tab page here. Let's run this. All right. So you could see, let's first see how it typically renders, and try to understand how it actually works, so that we could better understand how data binding actually works. Fine. So yeah, we've seen here the settings. Welcome to settings page. The profile here. I have the username here. When I type something, Hari. All right. So when I click here, you see the activity indicator loading and login success. Nice. Let's see how this is done first. Let me stop this. Fine. So you can see that there is some things called binding over here and all. In my previous pages, I had the same setup here, binding, which what it does is, this enable property in the runtime has to take the value of this toggle. Where it has to take it from the switch. So that's what this source is all about. So we are just going to apply the same concept here. Instead, what we are going to do is, this just depends only upon XAML. Here we are going to go about the view model concept, or model view model. So typically in the real-time scenario, the data comes in from different places. You populate those data using the business logics in somewhere else. So I have a view model here. So it's very simple. I've given the property change for that. I have two properties, username and password, to store the information in my view model. Typically, you can do that in your model for storing your data and the business logics in your model. For simplicity, I've just set everything here in the view model. And a property called is valid login. And just to animate the activity indicator, I've created a property called is busy. And I have one other property called command. So this is yet another killer feature in Xamarin.Forms. You don't have to write anything in your code behind. You could see that here. I've not touched anything for these two pages anything in my code behind. It's just like what it is previously. So I don't have to write any code in the code behind. So this button, instead of writing and click the event, I have used a command to mention the button what has to be done when clicking it. So whenever I click the log command button, I have informed the compiler to execute this login method. What it typically does is, it starts the SBC so that here I have binded this isBusy property to the animator of the activity indicator as well as to the visibility of the activity indicator. So whenever I click the button, you could see that the activity indicator started to run, started to animate, and then it loads for some time. And as I've given here, I've just set a delay of two seconds. In real time scenario, you can make an API call, you can validate how this is working. And all I have done is, if these two are not empty, I've just mentioned that it is a valid login, otherwise it's not. After that is done, I have just stopped animating my indicator as well as the visibility will be controlled. So simple as it is. It works fine and just works similarly in all other platforms. Cool. So how this actually works is, here you can see that we have set the source property. So we have informed our property of a view to decide where to take the value of is toggled from. Whereas in this case, I have not mentioned anything like that. I have simply mentioned username, password, valid login command and all. So that's what this is all about. I have mentioned my entire page that the context for this page is this view model. So typically how MVVM works is whenever you create a view, there is a view model associated to that, which will be mentioned as context. So any information for that particular page will be logic, will be the code for that page, or anything data for that page will be coded in a different place where it can be bound from. So communication is from one page to one view model. That's how typically it works. So now you would be understanding. So whenever this entry looks out for the text, it will go refer this view model. If there is a property called username, then it will bind the value of that. Simple. And the default mode of this text property in entry is two-way. For example, if we do have this username instead of to be null, we have this as something else. It will be rendered in the runtime. That's how it typically works. So this is an example for two-way binding mode. So the binding modes which I talked about in my demos, this is one classic example. So any changes that I type in here will be reflected in the view model as well. Anything that I have given in the view model, you can see that it is pre-configured here, right? So now let me just even show this. So I cannot debug this. If I change in here, I could see the password right after here. So whenever I have changed some values here, I have just given s login. So this value will be communicated to my view model. You can see that the value of my property is test login. As simple as it is. So values from the actual view model is given coming to UI, and values that I've entered in the UI is also going back to the view model. This is what two-way binding is all about. And options are there to explicitly mention your binding mode. So this is typically the path, and there are a lot of other options. You can mention the mode as what it is, the source which I have said there from where this property has to be referred in. You can create your own converter. You can mention what parameters has to be passed to that converter. You can configure string format to that as well. A lot of other features, and we have also shown one example of string format here. I've formatted my string how it has to be looked like. The value for this text property is just the value of this slider, whereas I have given some additional text to be custom formatted. So that is also possible in Xamarin.Forms. All right. So without wasting too much time in here, let's go to the styling part. So that's something very, interesting to see. let me create a page called styling. I have everything that you required already, but still let me just code it live. This time I'm going to create it as a content page rather than creating as a tab page. All I need is styling.xaml. Awesome. And I'm going to mention my application that my styling page is my startup page. Great. So let's take the same UI from here as an example to apply styling. All right. So what styling does is, it lets you define how your UI should look like. So typically when designing or when crafting an UI, you cannot go in and hard-codedly give these many properties for every view. So that's not going to work out, right? So you are going to predefine certain things, and you just expect your view to render just like that wherever you do it. So that's what we're typically going to see in this part of demo. So what I am going to do is, write styles typically inside the resources here. I need a resource dictionaries. So all I need to do is write styles. So let me not waste my time in coding here. I'll just take these from here. Let's say um, label style. One other property I would set is setter property text color property to be blue. Fine. So now you can see that I have a label blue style. So what I have typically done is, I have written a style for my views. So which, you know, whatever I have properties that I've given here, let me just, let's take this for an example. This label. So I have font attributes. I've given that here in my style to be bold. I have font size. I've set that here to be large. Have horizontal option center, given it as center here. Vertical option center and expand, and given it as here. All right. In addition to that, I've mentioned the background to be transparent. I don't want any background color for my label. Fine. So what I'm typically going to do is, instead of using every time all these properties here, all I'm going to mention my view is that take the style that I've created here. See that it is automatically loaded. So this is how it typically works. It's just going to render the same output. How it works is, I have defined a style. So I have mentioned explicitly the key for that, how this style can be used in. So this is what you call it as explicit style. So the list of styles that we have mentioned, I have mentioned in my style, in my slidings. Let's cover all this up fastly as soon as possible. All right. So this is what you call it as explicit style. All right. You could see that everything is as it is. This label is alone just blue color. Let me change my code in here. Let me just use the hard reload feature. I'm going to use a same thing. Let me just change this blue style to red style. So all this is just same red property. So this red style, I'm going to apply it for the label here. So this two has the same set of properties: font attributes, font size, horizontal options, vertical options, all set. I don't want to repeat it again and again, right? So let me just give it a style, static resource. So this is the syntax for using styles. You can all you have to do is mention that what type of resource it is. I have mentioned it statically here. So this is by default static resource. I have given a name for this, so that typically has to be given here. It will be applied. So now I have saved this. So let me check here. You can see that it has changed to red. This even supports here. Even if I change that to some other color, like let's say what else we have not used, purple. See that the returns to purple. So let's keep it as a red here. Fine. So this is what you call it as explicit style, as I had mentioned in the slides here. The next one is the implicit style. What implicit style is, uh, here we have hard-codedly mentioned that this particular label alone has to be of this style. This particular label alone has to be of this style. This is also again painful. Basically, programmers are very lazy, especially like me. So we'll not write these lines of code down. Let me write it once, and wherever I use a label, that style has to be applied. I'm that lazy, right? So to have that features, what we can typically do is, let's take this label as an example. Let us code this part. So all these properties, let it be a default um, appearance for the label, whatever we are using in this demo. What I'm going to do is, let me create a style. All right. So whenever you're creating a style, all you need to do is set this target type property to be label. Fine. So this one feature I forgot to tell you all about is you could see that though XAML is all about making things easier. Many might know about this intelligence, whatever the properties that displays here. That's perfectly fine. One killer feature in Xamarin that allows us to be happy about is even when you don't know what this view is all about, even when you don't know what this property or what this particular UI element is all about, you don't have to worry about it when you're coding for Xamarin.Forms. For a typical fresher, there is a feature called this highlighted star properties or most frequently used properties of any UI element. So for this style, you could see that these are the features that are highly used. When it comes to label, you could see that it will show the most frequently used properties as star at the top, right? So fine. So I have defined my target type simply as as label. You could see that I have not mentioned any key here. If I have not mentioned any key, this style will be applied wherever I'm using labels in my particular applications. This particular page. Let me just fill it up whatever I have here. So quickly done that. Horizontal options, value to be fill and expand. All right. Name, sector, property, what else? Vertical options. I have given it as start. Property to be the next property is background color. I had it initially as light gray. And property to be text color. Let it be just black. And one other thing, font size. Right. And what else I've missed it? Font attributes. Bold, gray. So covered almost everything except these two. Fine. Um, is on the text alignment. So let the text be displayed at the center horizontally as well as center vertically. has to be 100. All right, this is just one-time work. You'll love this. Uh, all I'm doing is, I've just removed everything from here. You could see that label still looks like the same. And what the best part is, label, text, subtitle, same. You could see that exactly the same style is applied. I've not done anything extra. All I've done is defined a style. You could see that this subtitle is automatically taking the style. And one important thing is, you could customize even these properties. For example, you don't want this particular label to be not loaded with the exact height. I can customize the property here. Let's give it as 70 since it is a subtitle. To see that the immediate property which mean that the values which has at the bottom hierarchy will be taken given a more preference. So here in the style it has 100, but still you have hard codedly mentioned as 70, and so 70 takes the precedence. So that's one example I wanted to show, and something else is, you can see that all of the intelligence shown here as well. Fine. So we have covered in. Let's quickly go back here. We have covered explicit styles, implicit styles, and what global style is all about. Uh, if I take this here, typically does not work. All right, it becomes very normal. If I mention it here, you could see that I have mentioned there is an app. You could see that this will be rendered here. Even if we now go back, use whatever label we have used in this demo page, that will also have the same look and feel. This demo property here. All right. I'm not going to show that. Maybe if I have time, I'll show that in the last, because I don't want to stop and waste my time here. All right. So that's an example of global styles here. And the next one is the style inheritance. Let me quickly show you how cool this feature is all about. So style inheritance is again to the next level of laziness. You don't have to define these big of styles and all, right? You could see that these properties are repeated: background style, horizontal options, vertical options, font size, and font attributes. All that differs is only this, right? So let me do one thing. Let me create a style here called as base style. Save it here and mention this style here based on results of base time. And let me just remove this all here. I could show this before, but just to show the benefit of this, you see that everything is as is. All I've done is, I've reduced 5 lines of code here based on static resource of base time. So I've just written less code here now, and I've made use of the inheritance feature. So that's what style inheritance is all about. All right. So there is one another fine here. So let's do this one. So next one is the dynamic styles. The dynamic style is applying styles in the runtime. So let me use these two styles itself. Now what I'm going to do is, instead of using this static resource, let me use this dynamic resource and dynamic demo style. Right. So what I'm going to do is, for this part, I'm forgetting about this MVVM just for the demo purpose. Let me open this up. Uh, Sources. Okay, stop this. Uh, where is my Xamarin? Here, fine. Here. All I'm typically going to do is, apply this one. That's it. So as similar to here, let me just copy the code from here rather than wasting time. This will be required for us. Oh, sorry. This one is resources again of given name here. I changed what was it before? Label blue style. Fine. Yeah. So the here. uh, I'm mentioning that label blue style here. So what I have done is let my dynamic demo style be by default. Sorry, it has to be my dynamic demo style by default will be the blue style. And here, what I'm going to do is, whenever I toggle, we configure this event. Okay. So now what I have done is, I've configured this one. Whenever I toggle the value, I'll apply a different style. So that's how I plan for this. So let's run this. So you could see that the styles are changing in the runtime. So that's how dynamic resource works. And so based on any conditions that you wanted to do in your case, you can get this done. Is it resource key? Am I missing? Just give me a second. Yes, for the dynamic resource. Sorry. Should work fine. Yes, it is. Resources. Everything is right about this. Yes, everything is right about this. To work fine. Let me check that fine. All right, let me check that the end. And the next thing is the device style. As I said, there are various styles in here. Let me just apply this title style. Once again, let me run this demo, which I already have in here. This happens sometimes. You'll be doing everything right and still cannot find the answer in the runtime. Or it takes some time. So let me run this in Android ready. Fine. Um, Fine. So you could see that this part is applied with title style. Maybe if I could, do one more thing. I will create a separate window here, and let me just comment out the default appearance of label here, just for this demo sake, so that we could see how this actually works out. Oh, I already have it. Fine. So you could see that from this demo, the title style will be applied for the last two labels here. So if I choose subtitle style here, that typically will apply the subtitle style here as well. So that's how it typically works in here. This dynamic resource, you could see from here that the dynamic label style, and I enable button, you can see that the red style is applied. Now I disable, the blue style is applied. So based on my changes in the runtime, styles are actually changing. So that's what it is all about, the dynamic style and device styles. Fine. The last one, before we are closing it off, let me explain about this as well. Sorry. Fine. Which is the fine separators. So the class style is nothing but you can mention a class name to your separator. So here I have a box view. So I mentioned this class separator, a class as separator. All you have to do is near UI, you just have to mention the class type as separator here. The demo, you could see that this is applied. If I remove my class type here, typically the box view will not be there. Default appearance of box view will be there. So this is one other options of styling using the separators. You can see that it is happening. It's cool as it is. Fine. So that's it about our demo. Let's go back here. So fine. So I've given all the details of whatever I've shown in my demo here. So the code is everything available here. You can scan the QR code if you require, or you can also go and see the references here. Uh, so that is also available. So if there would be any questions, and I'll be happy to take it up. So any questions?
Okay. Thanks, Hari. I think that was a great session. So it was a cool live demo coding.
Thank
Uh,
you. Thank you so much.
yeah, thanks for that.
Sorry, sorry for the last glitch that happens sometimes in the real
Yeah,
life.
yeah. Yeah, sometimes it
Whatever you
happens during
prepare.
live coding. Yeah, yeah.
Fine.
Yeah,
Any
so let's
questions? I
say,
can take it up.
yeah, okay. Mm, okay, I think there are no questions, Hari. Um,
All right.
yes, guys. So if you have any questions, like you can reach out to him using this Twitter handle, cn_Harikrishnan. So if you have any questions regarding Xamarin.Forms with XAML, like you can reach out to him. I think he'd be happy to help. Yeah.
Yeah, you can reach me out in any of my social medias. I'll be very happy to help you regarding this demo. And as I said, all this content are already available. So I've given the links. You can scan the QR codes, and this slide document and the demos and everything are already available in the GitHub. So thank you so much for this session and the opportunity.
Yeah.
See you soon. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Hari. Yeah. So I think we came to the end of the Xamarin Day. Yeah. So over to you, Sundaram.
Yeah, we came to the end, and thank you, Lokesh and Harry. It was an awesome session, and we got to know more about Xamarin, and especially the demos are very helpful. And a very sincere thanks to our attendees for joining, and I hope you also found more useful information from our speakers. And this is our meetup link, so please join here to get updates from us. So once again, a big thanks and happy weekend. Thank you.
All right, guys, I'm closing the session.
Yeah, Lokesh. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Hari, you can. I think Loki. I think Suhas is facing some network issues. I think.